what's up you guys? Century Productions here, and I'm just doing a little setup with this new retro modular Iron Man figure, and I'm really digging this setup right now. We're working with a couple cutouts of some computers in the background. These are just kind of, you know, in the frame. You can kind of place them where you want to. This one right here is a little bit more front than that one. That one's pushed a little bit further back. I initially had another color poster behind there. It was actually the top piece of this dio down here, but the cutouts were blending a little bit too much with it. I know these look like they're actually blending in with the blue as well, but it was actually like almost indistinguishable between the cutouts and the old background I was using. So I went with more of just a kind of like sky blue, and I have a little light down here. This is the little light I use to light the bottom of a lot of my setups. It gives this nice little glow on the bottom there, and it works pretty nicely. So yeah, I was messing around with this Iron Man, and I really do like it. I think the initial version that came with the Ursa Major wave is just like, I think it's the best Iron Man. So naturally, when they decided to do more of this flat yellow and flat red, I was like, oh man, I gotta get in on this, because I remember watching the Iron Man show when I was a little kid, and I've actually been watching a lot of it, trying to gather some ideas to shoot with this Iron Man figure. And man, that show's, it's kind of a hard watch, but aesthetically, I love the look of that show. I think the show looks really cool. I love the colors. I love the characters. I just think some of the storytelling's a little dated, but this figure is pretty cool, man. They give you some options. Obviously, it comes with the photon cannon, and I know that's Marvel vs. Capcom inspired, and it also comes with the original head from the original Ursa Major release, which is more Marvel vs. Capcom accurate. You know, I'm not really super big video game guy. I was never really into arcade games growing up. I was playing really like PlayStation, PS2 stuff, maybe some Nintendo 64 stuff. So I was never really around for the arcade kind of era, and I just never really got into it. I've never really played Marvel vs. Capcom, so I don't really have any kind of connection to Marvel vs. Capcom. I was initially going to do a setup for Marvel vs. Capcom using the original head and everything with this Iron Man, but I just wasn't feeling it, man. I just couldn't really get invested into the shot, and I just felt icky about the whole thing, and I just decided not to do it. So, you know, I think that's probably maybe my age a little bit, but, you know, the older I'm getting, I'm realizing if I'm not with it, there's no point in putting any of the effort into it. I'd rather spend my time doing something a little bit cooler, kind of like this. This is very animated kind of feel. That's the kind of feeling I'm going for. I wanted it to feel like the old Iron Man show, maybe bring back a little bit of nostalgia for some people. So it's a very simple shot. We're working with the retro War Machine as well. That was a figure I initially wasn't going to get, but when they announced this Iron Man, I was like, okay, well, I got to get the retro War Machine, and I have to admit, these guys look amazing together. So it's kind of cool. If you got your setup, you can put your Ursa Major Iron Man and your deluxe War Machine together with those colors, and then if you're rocking the animated kind of feel, you can put these two together. So they look really nice next to each other. Lighting was a little bit difficult for this one. I've noticed with this Iron Man in particular and the Ursa Major version that the plastic is a very hard plastic, so it shows a lot of reflections. So maybe you can position the light so where the glare is on a part of the figure that maybe kind of, you know, can kind of like blend in a little bit better than most, but it's still going to show up no matter what you do. So as long as I don't really have any glares or reflections on their face plates, for the most part, I'm usually very happy, because I find that the reflections on the face plates, I'm talking about their actual heads here, they just are super distracting, and I never really like that look. So I try to maneuver them in a way that isn't the case with the lights. But it's very tricky to light these. You know, of course, we got to light the figure. We have to light these cutouts as well. And there's actually another cutout right down here in the foreground, which I really like. these cutouts are actually from the old G.I. Joe cartoon, and they just work perfectly right here. Back in the day, like maybe like 6 months, a year back, I just was going through all the G.I. Joe cartoons and taking screenshots and pulling certain stuff that I could, maybe make a cutout for, or make as a background prop. You'll never find an actual 3D printed prop like these old computer cutouts right here. You just won't find them. So, when in doubt, cut it out. That's what I always say. So I got tons of stuff like this that I can just kind of play around with, and when the time comes, I can pull them out and make them look dope. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. Up the saturation a crazy amount. I think it's maxed out. I really wanted these colors to just pop, almost to the point that it seems a little unnatural how much the colors are popping, because, once again, we're going for that animated feel. So yeah, let's check this out. I've talked long enough. Alright, so continuing the Marvel Legends retro animated Iron Man 1994, whatever you want to call this figure, obviously inspired by the old cartoon. Still doing some shots with this guy. This is probably going to be the last shot for a while that I'm going to do with him, because I have some other ideas that I do want to get to. But this is one of the bigger setups that I've set up with this figure. Obviously it's very standard, the initial idea, but there's a lot more layers to it. There's a lot of depth to this one, and there was definitely a lot of maneuvering with the lights. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lights to light up everything in this entire setup. From the front right here, the front of this setup right here, it probably goes almost 3 feet to the blue sky poster board back there. And the reason why it's so there's so much depth and there's so much length to this setup is because I'm using these dials from, I think his Instagram's BTADTBS. I might have messed that up, but this guy makes some of the most incredible animated styled dioramas I've ever seen. There's tons of people in the community that have them. I'm trying to get a couple more from him, but I'm kind of waiting to see what he has available, see if there's something that can be commissioned. But these are just like modular buildings that he put up probably around almost 2 years ago that I've only shot maybe once or twice. And since I started shooting ACBA photos, I think I've gotten a lot better. So I think it was time to finally whip this thing out and shoot it. It's just 2 big modular buildings. They cover a lot of space. And depth is something I've kind of touched on this channel before. I don't usually work with that much space. I just usually have this little table right here, which is maybe like 2 feet long. So adding an additional foot, it gives me a lot of more space to work with, but also a lot more problems to deal with, or I guess more problems to solve. Obviously the poster board back there is not really that big when you're pushing the dioramas and everything this close to the camera, so you gotta also work with the confined space with that. And then on top of that, you have to light the background, and then you have to light the buildings, and then you got to make sure you get enough light on the figures, and then you have to make sure your focus correct. So there's a lot of stuff that's going into this. So I just kind of try to keep it simple, put some lights on his boosters. Right here, there's a couple lights underneath here that I can show you guys. Just little Ulanzi lights that I like to use a lot. And then of course I threw War Machine in the back to kind of give the idea of how big this setup is. And then I had to make sure that he was lit correctly, and obviously the posing was probably the funnest part of this setup for me, because if you watch the old animated cartoon, he does these like really outlandish weird poses when he's flying. So he has his arms in front, and then he just has the boosters on his feet working. So obviously if you've seen the Iron Man movies, he has the thrusters on his hands and everything, which you can actually use on this figure, but I wanted to go more animated with this. So I put his arms up, put his faceplate up like he's lifting off, and War Machine's in the background watching his buddy leave, or I don't exactly know what the caption's going to be, but I really like the look of this diorama with this figure. I think it just kind of fits perfectly. They're very blocky. They have lots of little added details on the actual diorama itself that kind of gives that animated feel. Typically I would shoot with just a blank, either the sky background that I have from Michaels, which is more realistic clouds, or just like a plain blue poster board. But I feel like the clouds, you know, they're a little bit more cartoonish, and I think they kind of work with this shot a little bit better. So it's just the whole setup is built around the idea that I want to capture that feel of the animation from that time in the mid-90s. So that's why I went with that background. That's why I went with this pose. That's why I went with this diorama. And it wasn't really too hard to figure it all out. I've been through enough setups now that I know where all my lights should be, and make sure to get enough light on the Iron Man itself. And then I'm working with a really low f-stop, so everything in the background is going to be really nicely blurred. If I can switch the focus on War Machine, you can kind of see him a little bit better, and maybe a little bit more of those details on that diorama back there, the building. So yeah, this is really cool. I almost wish I could have fit more of like the building and everything in there. There's actually a lot more details on this diorama than what I'm actually showing, but I think the depth is mainly what I was going for here. So kind of had to move my table out and obviously work with the lights, but I think it came out pretty good. I think I got everything pretty evenly lit. I'm working with a very high contrast, a very high saturation, because I really want those colors to pop, like I mentioned in the other shot, all based around, you know, getting that animated feel. So I'm really happy with this setup, and I think it kind of does this figure justice. This is a fantastic figure. Obviously, the modular Iron Man that they initially released with Ursa Major was probably in a lot of people's top 10 lists, and I almost want to say that I like this one more, just because it's nostalgic to me, I guess. Even though the Iron Man cartoon isn't that nostalgic to me, I think that era of comics and cartoons and everything, I think this figure embodies all of that perfectly. So really fun shot here. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Just only 2 shots this time, but I got a lot more lined up for a future episode, and I think they're going to be really cool. I'm going to try to focus on some more funny shots. I've been doing a lot of animated shots and like action shots, so I'm going to focus on some funny stuff. I like to have a good variety on my Instagram and on Facebook when I post to ACBA, and obviously for YouTube as well. So make sure to check out my Instagram. There's a lot more behind the scenes reels and stuff like that on Instagram that show you maybe a little bit more in depth of this setup and all the lighting and everything like that. I think you guys, if you're actually wanting to start shooting toys, I think it might be a little informative and give you a good idea of how to set some stuff up, or maybe you just like you want to see more of what the scene looks like. So definitely worth checking out my Instagram. That'll be in the link in the description below. Make sure to subscribe if you guys are digging this content. I definitely want to put out more of these episodes. I like kind of going in depth with these setups because I just want to share this hobby with everybody, and it's definitely one of my passions. And if it's something that people think they want to get into, I think they might learn a thing or two from my channel. So yeah, thanks guys, and I'll catch you guys next time. Let's check out this shot though.
That's crispy.